At She Can, we tell women's stories. We interview women from all over the world and all walks of life because it's easier to be what you can see. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, our mail list, and I'm very excited to introduce you to Somia Sadiq today. Somia, it's really lovely to have you. You have an unbelievably long CV and are an incredibly accomplished woman. You're a peace builder, you're a speaker, you're the founder of Narratives Inc. It's an award-winning consulting firm based in Winnipeg, Canada, focused on impact assessment, conflict transformation, and territorial planning. You also founded Kahani, a nonprofit dedicated to amplifying stories and promoting peace building through storytelling. You have so many other roles. You're the registered professional planner and member of the prestigious College of Fellows with the Canadian Institute of Planners. You're an environmental professional with Eco Canada. You're an associate with the Canadian Network for Research on Terrorism, Security and Society, and a member of the Institute of Security and Global Affairs in The Hague. You also sit on the Ministers' Advisory Council on Impact Assessment, advising the Federal Minister of Environment and Climate Change on the implementation of impact assessment in Canada. This is a real mouthful and very inspiring. So tell us a little bit more about yourself. And Somia, how would you put it in your own words?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to be here to share with you. The way that I've often been asked to describe myself, and it always takes me into a bit of a journey, if you will. And I like to start by acknowledging my ancestors. So I am Punjabi and Kashmiri. I like to say I come from the land of goats on my dad's side and the land of mountain goats on my mom's side. I'm a newcomer in Canada. Everything I do, the way I operate is very much rooted in my ancestral teachings and what I've learned from my grandparents, from my aunties, and from my parents, if you will. So my journey very much is rooted in who I am and where I come from.
And tell us a little bit more about then what is the sort of line that goes through your whole life? How did you get to where you are today? When did you realize I want to be part of transformation? I want to be a mediator. I want to be a peace builder. I want to lead with stories.
Great question. So I think it's very much a part of my identity, because I come from a culture that is so rooted in stories and storytelling. This is how we learn. We learn from our grandmothers through stories. Instead of, I have so many memories of, instead of my parents simply saying, don't do this or don't do that, they would weave this very intricate story of so-and-so who did such and such and had these consequences. So storytelling is very much a part of that culture. So for me, that has always been how I operate, how I bring myself to the work that I do. Within that, transformation has always been a part of my identity as well. My ancestors have always played a very important role in mediating conflicts, whether that was between different families or between husbands and wives, or between parents and their children, or whatever that may be. So I grew up very much watching my my Miyaji, my great-grandfather, my Dadajani, my grandfather, my dad, mediating conflict in various forms. And normally that would be really rich in cultural rituals and bringing people together and listening to their stories, sometimes over days. Lots of food, lots of laughter, lots of music. So my approach to any conflict then is very much rooted in holding space and creating space for people to come together and express and find ways to work together. So yeah, in that sense, transformation feels very natural in terms of where we need to go as a society.
So tell us a bit more about Narratives Inc. and what do you do on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, thank you. My day-to-day varies a lot. So Narratives is a consulting firm. We're based out of Winnipeg, like you mentioned earlier. A majority of our work is with Indigenous communities, with marginalized communities, with other communities, to really create space, hold space for nations, for communities to reclaim their sovereignty, to reclaim their languages, reclaim their culture, create space for understanding that is much more holistic. So within that, it takes us into very interesting spaces, whether that's impact assessment, trying to understand the impacts of a proposed project, a program, or a plan on a particular community, to nations negotiating a revenue sharing agreement on, say, a mining project, to going way back and understanding the history or the legacy of the Indian residential school system and the impacts of trauma on communities today. So it takes us into very interesting and very challenging spaces. So that's really what Narratives does. And the word narratives, again, is also inspired by this idea of bringing multiple perspectives together in story and in conversation. So that is very, very much rooted in how we approach any research or how we approach any work with communities that we work with.
So Mia, tell us a little bit more about the pitfalls and the challenges that you have with your work and how do you overcome them?
Yeah, so I think there are challenges at so many levels, and there's always, with every challenge, there's opportunities. My team can speak to this. There's two things that I always emphasize. One is what I call a 40% rule, which is if at any time we're starting to do something and we know 40% of what we're getting into, we probably know lots. And the rest will evolve because we'll hold space for that knowledge and for that understanding to emerge. So there's a 40% rule. So that can be a challenge for folks, as you know, for some folks, you want to know every little detail before you jump in. And for others, they're comfortable with a 40%. So that would be one challenge. I think the bigger challenge, though, is when we're talking about anyone reclaiming their sovereignty, we have to have the difficult conversation on why their sovereignty was lost in the first place. What were those rights that were taken away from them? What was the process that unfolded in order for that to happen? And in Canada, we have a very challenging history of colonization. So for us to be in that space to unpack what that means to us as people, to us as individuals, as professionals, is hard work. It's also heart work. So there's lots of having to unlearn what we've learned in educational institutes and our role in our places, and what does that mean moving forward. So I would say a lot of that is perhaps most challenging, but with every challenge, there's opportunities. I say this to my team on a regular basis, that every time you see a barrier, let's identify 3 possible solutions to it and then pick one of those. And then if we know 40% about that, let's run with it and see where we go.
Yeah, amazing. Somia, so what do you feel are the qualities that you have that serve you every day to do this work?
That's a good question. It's also a tough question. I have a hard time articulating a response to that, and I think most women would relate to that. One of the really important teachings that my grandfather would often say, and then my dad would repeat to us many, many times, is the higher in life you go, the lower your head should bow. And you know, for us, that teaching is very important in humility and recognizing recognizing the responsibility that comes in these spaces. So I carry that. With that, humility piece is also attached. It can be hard to articulate what you think your strengths are, but I think, I lead with my heart. I trust my gut. It can be wrong, and that's okay. It's my best understanding at the time. I strongly believe in recognizing at all times that we are complex people who learn, who grow, who learn from mistakes. I am resilient. I've learned that from my grandmothers and my aunties. Because I navigated Canada as a newcomer myself, as a Muslim woman of color, I've learned a lot by being that person, and I keep learning each day, being in that space. I'm not afraid of taking risks. Sometimes fall flat on my face, but that's okay because I learned from that. And I really value my people and my team, and always am looking for ways to hold space for them to thrive wherever they might be.
So, Mia, and what are you most proud of? What do you feel are your big achievements that you're really proud of?
I am very proud of my team. Our team is so diverse in all of the spaces and all of the initiatives that I'm involved in. Um, I feel really incredible being surrounded by people who are so smart, so so passionate about their views. To me, that is a sense of pride when I can bring people together in that space, in that way where they can live, exercise their identities. To me, anytime I'm in an environment where I've been able to do something like that or create something like that, it's very exciting for me. Um, and the second thing I'll offer as a sense of pride for me is, I don't know, just being able to do what I do in the space that I am, given who I am, and reflecting back on how my journey started in Canada. Like I said, as a Muslim woman who used to wear hijab, to overcoming those barriers to be where I am today, to have a voice and to be able to use that in a good way to hopefully inspire people. I think to me is that checks out as a source of pride.
Definitely. So, Mia, so give us some top tips. You're a peace builder, you're a space holder and space creator, you're a mediator. We have 76 elections around the world. We have a very polarized world. How can we unite from your experience?
Great question. One of my favorite quotes, I love Rumi. I love poetry. I dabble in poetry myself. One of my favorite Rumi quotes is, "Beyond the ideas of wrongdoing and right doing is a field. I will meet you there."
I
To me,
love this. I thank you for saying this is my favorite as well.
it's beautiful, and it's so meaningful because we spend so much time in that space of yes or no, or this is right or wrong. We're taught those things from the time we grow up, whether that's part of our religious teaching, spiritual teaching, cultural teaching, whatever that might be. We're put into these boxes of one or the other, and we're taught that we are different from these individuals who are around us. And so as humans, and a lot of my work is in that space of identity and othering and framing, we're taught these things from a very young age. So it's very natural for us to stick to those habits and
Yeah.
continue to find ways to stay separate. So I really believe in creating a space where we can come together in ways we don't have to agree, but if we can play in that field together, I
Yeah.
think that goes a long way. And that is the approach that I take when I'm in any of the peace building work that I do, any conflict transformation work that I do. Is one of the principles at the beginning that I introduce is, I share Rumi's quote and I talk about, for the next 3 hours, let's play in that field together. And what we do by starting things that way is give each other permission to
Mm,
not take a position,
mm,
because we feel like once we've taken a position, that's great, responsibility's over. It's easy to take a position. It's actually harder to not.
yeah.
And that's where transformation happens, if we can stay in that field together and explore what a non-polarized view might be.
And recognizing the humanity in each one of us. And I love what you said, and I
Mhm.
couldn't agree more. And just looking the other person in the eye and thinking, actually, there's so much more that unites us than divides us as
Yeah,
humans.
absolutely. And the other thing I'll add there is we underestimate the role that trauma plays in how we come together as people.
Yeah,
In a lot of the conversations, we encourage people to reframe what is wrong with you to what has happened to you. And as soon as you realize that our experiences are past traumas, whether that's collective, whatever the nature of that trauma might be, if we can come together and see each other as human and recognize that we all have navigated challenging experiences of all sorts of dimensions and natures, it can foster empathy. It can create space for us to come together. We can start seeing humor together. We can laugh together. We can start seeing each other as human if we
yeah,
can hold space for that.
yeah. So, Mia, so what are your plans and goals? What's on the cards for you for Narratives Inc? What are you sort of planning in the next couple of years?
Um, what I've always resisted building a strategic plan for narratives, which is always a very interesting conversation that I have with a lot of my business colleagues. I think because we are a group of folks who very much are guided by communities that we work with. We're guided by what's happening on the national landscape, on the international landscape, as our understanding of rights and responsibilities evolve. That means our main focus is we know our why, we know our how, and we're going to keep doing what we're doing. So we'll keep holding space for conversations to happen, for dialogue to happen, for healthy dialogue to happen that can turn into action, that can turn into reconciliation, that can turn into tangible changes towards conflict transformation. So what's in the cards is we're keep doing what we're doing, keep learning from the mistakes that we make, but keep walking that path together.
So, Mian, I'm so grateful for everything you said and for you telling your story because it's so aligned with what we do at She Can. And so I couldn't be more excited to show your story on shecan.world. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.